Tonight on Bridge City News, the CN rail strike is taking a toll, frustrating farmers, the oil patch, and Quebec's premier says the province only has a few days' supply of propane left. Prime Minister Trudeau met with Ontario Premier Doug Ford today, and both say they want to promote a message of national unity. And Grant Hunter, Minister of Red Tape Reduction, spoke in Lethbridge today on the continuing progress on streamlining the regulatory process in Alberta.
Your nation. Your province. Your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Paul Arthur.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. The Lethbridge Building Industry and Land Development Association hosted a luncheon today featuring Taber-Warner-Carston MLA Grant Hunter, the Associate Minister of Red Tape Reduction, who spoke to local business leaders about the government's plan to streamline the regulatory process. Lethbridge Mayor Chris Spearman was also in hand to echo the city's support.
This government is completely focused on making sure that we reduce regulatory burden. We're going to reduce regulatory burden by at least 1/3 over the next 4 years. We're going to make sure that Alberta is the freest and fastest growing economy in North America. This is where we're going to get to, and this is going to help Albertans get back to work, and that's really why we're doing this. Bring that foreign investment and free up our investors here in Alberta so that we can have lots of job opportunities for everyday Albertans.
We want to make sure that we're doing things in our city that encourage investment and reduce red tape and create jobs.
The guest speaker at yesterday's Southern Alberta Council on Public Affairs unpacked the results of the October 21st federal election. He argued that the unusual results and feelings of alienation are not disconnected and that our electoral system makes Parliament look more divided than voters actually are.
So the question today was about did anyone really win the 2019 election? So if you look at the results, I mean, it was pretty bad for everybody. So the Liberals won the most seats, obviously, and remained in government, but didn't win the most votes. The Conservatives did win the most votes, but they mostly picked up votes in areas where they were already strong, so they didn't pick up too many seats. The NDP felt like they did quite well because they were expected to do poorly at the beginning, but ultimately they lost half their seats. The Green Party won fewer votes than they did in 2008, so at least results-wise, it was pretty bad all around.
Dr. Paul Ferry has a PhD in political science from the University of Calgary with a focus on voter behavior. Taber emergency services were called out to an area just east of the city early this morning. A 4-vehicle collision took place along Highway 3 and Range Road 153 just before 7 a.m. Emergency crews had to extricate one person from their vehicle using the jaws of life. The individual was taken to hospital in Calgary via Stars Air Ambulance. RCMP continued to investigate the cause of the accident. Lethbridge's own Tevi Legg has been named to the Women's Executive Network's 2019 Canada's Most Powerful Women list, which included her in the Mercedes-Benz Emerging Leaders category for women between the ages of 30 and 40. Legg, who serves as Vice President of Strategy and Activation for Everyday Financial Services at ATB, was recognized for her efforts to advance the role of women in the business world and for her work to help foster diversity in the workplace.
Winning the Top 100 Most Powerful Women in Canada award to me really means that we're continuing to focus on the advancement of women in the workplace and the importance of that and the importance of having diverse perspectives around every table at every level. And I think that's really important in not only for our society but also for advancing our organizations into the future. Lethbridge has this incredible community of women that really empower each other, and to me, being powerful is about empowering other people, and I think Lethbridge is really great at that. We have a community of women that are doing incredible things, and I just feel fortunate to be amongst those incredible humans.
Legg says she's grateful for the support she's received from the Lethbridge community. Christmas cheer is in the air as the Lethbridge Family Service 27th Annual Angel Tree Christmas campaign got underway. The initiative provides children with Christmas gifts who otherwise might not get them. With the clock ticking, BCN's Loris Alexander explains how you can become Santa's little helper.
Lethbridge Family Services started Angel Tree as just a tiny gift-giving program, and it expanded. So they dedicated effort, time, energy, and money towards this effort. So today, it's grown exponentially.
There are now 120 drop-off locations that help collect gifts and donations. Gallucci says they collect approximately 7,000 gifts per year.
We give a gift that hopefully is on their wish list. We give a gift to fuel their imagination, like a science kit or art kit. And we give something that nourishes their mind, like educational toys, books, games, that kind of thing.
Volunteers and donors like Trina Timko will be bringing smiles to 2,400 children this year.
Angel Tree is near and dear to my heart because of the mission of bringing hope to not just kids but families. We have, as a family, we've been supporters of Angel Tree for several years, but we were always too busy with work and owning a business to give our time. And we now have the time, my husband and I, and this is one of the great volunteer opportunities that there are in Lethbridge and something that we could really stand behind.
A lady came in and she had a few toys and she had some McDonald's gift cards. And she said that she had been a recipient of Angel Tree years ago because we had helped her children, and she had remembered that, and she had just landed a job at McDonald's, and she felt like she had a little bit of money to spare for Angel Tree, and that just broke our hearts and made us happy at the same time.
Toys are not the only things on some of the lists this year.
On many lists, they're asking for food, and we were shocked. And we were told that the situation in the family is quite needy. And so all they have on their list is food.
Additionally, the Angel Tree Christmas campaign has a monetary goal of $45,000 for covering costs of gift cards to grocery stores or toys for special needs children. For Bridge City News, I'm Loris Alexander.
And you can get some help to wrap those gifts if you're shopping at Park Place Mall. Volunteer Lethbridge is offering that convenience daily until December 24th. Executive Director Diana Sim says they can use some more volunteers.
Yeah, we've been an organization that's been around for a long time, and so we really focus on connecting volunteers to opportunity. I think volunteering really is an investment. It's an investment in your community, and it's an investment in yourself. This also is one way to help eliminate some of the stress that you have at this extra time of year with volunteers who would love to wrap, giving them an opportunity, but also helping you out.
Wrapping prices begin at $3, depending on the size of the gift. Nearly a quarter of Albertans have rolled up their sleeves to receive the influenza vaccine this season. New numbers released Thursday from Alberta Health Services report over 1 million doses of the vaccine have been administered.
'Tis the season of joy and germs. We have a number of different viruses and bacteria circulating, actually not atypical for this time of year. So we are heading well into our influenza season. We've seen an increased incidence rate of new confirmed influenza cases, and that is all the way from, it sort of started Calgary, Brooks, and also now in our area here in Lethbridge. There are a number of different strains of influenza also that are circulating. So if you're immunized to one strain, you may get it again with another strain.
Influenza immunization is currently available free of charge to all Albertans aged 6 months and older. Premier Jason Kenney says firing Alberta Election Commissioner Lauren Gibson will save about $1 million over 5 years. Kenney says it will also restore election investigations to the way they were under the Chief Electoral Officer before the previous NDP government created Gibson's job in 2018.
So the NDP created a system that doesn't exist anywhere else for no explicable reason. And we've said, look, we're consolidating agencies, boards, and commissions. This is a consolidation that will save us $1 million, part of the broader savings. The position of commissioner will continue, but the commissioner will be located in the Chief Electoral Officer's office, which will save on redundant administration costs, overhead costs, rent, etc. It also means that the Chief Electoral Officer, rather than politicians, will select and appoint the commissioner who's responsible for enforcement and investigations. And I think that strengthens the independence of the enforcement function of election law to have that role selected by an arm's length public official and not by elected people, not by the elected government or the legislature. So to me, that makes a lot of sense. Obviously, the commissioner has been doing investigations into campaigns and candidates from the last election, including apparently some involving the United Conservative Party. And all of those investigations can, and I presume will, carry on by the commissioner in the Consolidated Chief Electoral Office.
NDP leader Rachel Notley says the government's decision to pass the bill to fire Gibson was a dark day for democracy. Alberta has introduced legislation that would allow it to join a proposed lawsuit to recoup health care costs related to the opioid crisis. British Columbia filed a proposed class action suit a year ago. It alleges that drug manufacturers falsely marketed opioids as less addictive than other pain drugs, helping to trigger a crisis that has killed thousands. Alberta wants to join the lawsuit, which seeks costs from manufacturers and distributors dating back to 1996, when OxyContin was introduced in the Canadian market. Alberta estimates the opioid crisis has cost the province $52 million so far this year. Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe says Ottawa must do more to help end the CN rail strike. He says the dispute is affecting the mining industry, the energy sector, and agriculture. Quebec's premier says that province is now rationing propane with only a few days of supply remaining. About 3,200 members of the Teamsters Canada Rail Conference have been off the job since Tuesday after the union and CN Rail failed to reach a contract. Transport Minister Marc Garneau says federal mediators are at work and that it is the best way to resolve the disputes.
We are, as I say, focused on trying to get the two sides to resolve their issues through collective bargaining. We are there to help with mediation, and we are confident that that is the best way to find the solution so that we can get CN back to work and all those trains operating and all those products being delivered.
A Humboldt Broncos player paralyzed from the waist down in the bus crash that killed 16 others is making progress since having spinal surgery in Thailand. Doctors implanted an epidural stimulator in Ryan Strasnicki's spine a few weeks ago, then injected stem cells above and below the injury. Since then, his father Tom has posted several videos, including one where his 20-year-old son was able to move a leg and another of him strapped into a harness and slowly walking with the use of a machine on wheels. Ryan's mother says the progress he's made has left her in tears. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Ontario Premier Doug Ford met in Ottawa today, their first meeting since the federal election campaign, in which the two were harshly critical of one another. But both stated today that they want to focus on what they can agree on.
What a pleasure to welcome Premier Ford to Ottawa. Opportunity for us to sit down and talk together about a lot of shared priorities, actually, whether it's investments in infrastructure, whether it's making sure we're supporting entrepreneurs and businesses. And there's lots that we're going to be able to talk about. We're obviously not going to agree on everything, but the things that we do agree on, I look forward to working respectfully, collaboratively, cooperatively in ways that are going to benefit the people of Ontario and indeed people right across the country.
We agreed that we're going to be collaborative and work together on shared priorities. We have to send a message around the world that yes, we're a big family and we may have a few bumps in the road, we may disagree, but we have to give businesses out there certainty. Because if you don't give businesses certainty, they'll leave. They'll leave and they'll invest in other areas, and we want them to stay here. And it's absolutely critical we unite the country and we stick together. I did mention to the Prime Minister that we do have to listen to the concerns of the people out west. They're hurting out there. I was out there in the summer, and you go to Calgary, half those buildings are empty there, and people are frustrated there in Saskatchewan, and we have to find common ground and support our friends out west. And
senior White House officials met with a group of Republican senators this morning to plan their strategy on impeachment proceedings against President Donald Trump. Trump called it all a hoax.
We had a tremendous week with the hoax, the great hoax. They call it the impeachment hoax, and that's really worked out incredibly well, and we have tremendous support. I think Roger's around here someplace. I don't think I've ever seen support in the Republican Party like we do right now. We've never had this kind of support. With you all the way. Full office.
Should the whistleblower be fired, Mr. President?
What whistleblower? I don't think there is. I consider it to be a fake whistleblower because what he wrote didn't correspond to what I said in any way, shape, or form. Thank you very much.
This morning, Trump called into the Fox and Friends television program to say that he wants a trial, claiming the Democrats have nothing incriminating on him. Hong Kong is set to hold local elections on Sunday that are becoming a referendum on 5 months of protests. All 452 seats on the city's 18 councils are up for grabs in the democratic elections. The pro-democracy opposition hopes to score a decisive victory because of public anger against the government and police. Pro-government candidates are urging voters to choose stability over violence. And now look at some of the movies playing this weekend. Here is Len Binning with the Movie Mill Minutes.
Last Christmas, a bit of a romantic comedy featuring the music of George Michael's, stars Amelia Clarke and Henry Golding. Amelia gets a job as a store elf and in the process finds true love.
Oh, you! Again.
What do you mean again?
Did you follow me here?
Are elves always so cynical?
Yes, relentlessly. These are dark times.
I'm Tom.
Kate.
The Irishman from Martin Scorsese stars Robert De Niro as Frank Sheeran in this biographical look of the Buffalino crime family and the ultimate disappearance of Jimmy Hoffa.
Hiya, Frank. Would you like to be a part of history?
Yes, I would.
Big business and the government are working together, trying to pull us apart. Something's got to be done.
What else you say? Now's not the time to not say.
And a decent-looking weekend on the way, if you don't mind the wind. A complete look at the weather forecast coming up. Well, let's take a look at the 7-day forecast. Partly cloudy skies overnight, a southwest wind gusting from 50 to 70 with a low of +2. For tomorrow, expect a mix of sun and cloud, along with that southwest wind continuing to gust from 50 to 70 and a high of 7. Increasing cloudiness for Sunday with a high of 6. A mix of sun and cloud for Monday and +1. Sunny and -2 for Tuesday, and cooling off on Wednesday with a high of only -11, along with a 60% chance of flurries, and much the same for Thursday. Checking the almanac, the average high for this time of year is 2 degrees with an average low of -9. Highest temperature on the state was recorded in 1954 at 18 degrees. Our record low, -30 in 1985. Sunrise was at 7:54 and sunset at 4:42. Let's see how tomorrow is shaping up across the country now. Expect a few showers and a high near 9 degrees for both Victoria and Vancouver, and a mix of sun and cloud with a high of 7 for Calgary as they head into the Grey Cup weekend. A bit warmer in Edmonton, partly cloudy and +9, sunshine and 7 degrees for both Regina and Saskatoon. Mainly sunny skies in Winnipeg tomorrow with a high of 4. Expect sunshine and 5 in Toronto, and a mainly sunny 3 degrees in both Ottawa and Montreal. In the Maritimes, skies should clear up in Fredericton with a high near 0, a chance of flurries and -1 for Halifax, some wet snow and +2 in Charlottetown, and much the same for St. John's, Newfoundland. Canadian retail sales fell 0.1% in September to $51.6 billion, which was in line with what economists had expected. Statistics Canada reports sales were weighed down by lower sales at motor vehicle and parts dealers and at gasoline stations. When you factor out those two subsectors, retail sales rose 0.7%. Desjardins Group President and CEO Guy Cormier is defending his bank after a massive data theft by an employee. All 4.2 million of the cooperative's clients had their personal data stolen. Cormier testified in front of legislators in Quebec City yesterday, urging them to look at the larger problems of securing personal information. Desjardins first reported in June that 2.9 million customers had been affected by the theft. The president of Manulife Bank says there is a financial wellness crisis and it's affecting Canadians of all demographics. An online survey by the bank suggests 2 in 5 indebted Canadians don't expect to escape debt in their lifetimes. 55% of Canadians report considerable non-mortgage debt, up 9 percentage points from a spring survey, while 60% say they have credit cards carrying a balance, up 12 percentage points from just a few months ago. Baby boomers appear to be in better financial shape than their younger Generation X and millennial counterparts. This is National Housing Day, and new data from Statistics Canada suggests more than 283,000 households have someone on a waiting list for affordable housing. Almost 2/3 of them have been on a waiting list for at least 2 years. The head of the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation says there's a lot more work to do before meeting the goal of having every Canadian living in a home they can afford by 2030. Now here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was down 44 points today to 16,954. The Dow was up 109 points on the day, 27,875. The S&P 500 was up to 3,110, and the Nasdaq was up almost 14 points to 8,519. Oil was down 65 cents to $57.93 per barrel. Natural gas was up 9 cents to $2.66. Gold was down $2.75 to $1,461.60 per ounce. Silver was down 8 cents to $17.02 per ounce. Wheat is at $235 per metric ton. Barley at $237 per metric ton. Canola is at $463 per ton, and corn is at $272 per ton. Live cattle were down 65 cents to $119.35. Feeder cattle were down $3.33 to $142.38, and lean hogs were up 58 cents to $61.58. And the Canadian dollar was down on the day to 0.7518 US. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, the CN rail strike is taking a toll, frustrating farmers, the oil patch, and Quebec's premier says that province is now rationing propane with only a few days' supply remaining. Lethbridge Mayor Chris Spearman stopped by our studios to give an update on where the city is at with the ongoing fight against crime and the opioid crisis, as well as some good economic news for the city. That interview is straight ahead. But first, here's a look at what's happening in and around your community.
Here's your Bridge City News Community Calendar. Do you enjoy the company of a canine friend? Windy City Canine Rescue is looking for foster homes for dogs waiting to be adopted. All food, supplies, and vet care during the dog's stay is provided. For more information about how to become a foster home, visit windycityrescue.com. The 2019 Big Christmas Trade Show and Farmers Market is taking place November 29th and November 30th at Exhibition Park. Come for unique gift ideas and a huge selection of holiday baking. New this year, the event is expanding into the entire main pavilion with over 250 vendors. Admission is $3. Children under 10 can enter for free. For more information, visit exhibitionpark.ca. Come for a festive evening to Crossroads Counseling Shine the Light Christmas Celebration and Fundraiser on Friday, December 6th, beginning at 6 p.m. at the Coast Lethbridge Hotel. Enjoy a full-course dinner, a silent auction, and live musical entertainment featuring the Freedom House Choir, Westside Choir, and the Evangelical Free Church Praise Choir. Tickets are $50 per person and can be purchased at the Crossroads Counseling Office. And that's your Bridge City News Community Calendar.
The city of Lethbridge got some good news and bad news this month with another good grade on the economic front, but another poor ranking when it comes to crime. Joining me in studio today is Lethbridge Mayor Chris Spearman. So, well, let's begin with some of this crime news here, Mayor Spearman. Maclean's Magazine's annual report on crime. Lethbridge now ranks number 15 on the list of most dangerous places. I mean, to me, I would go, really? You know, but, I mean, these are stats, I guess. So, any thoughts on this?
Well, the study comes out every year. Of course, we don't want to see our city's reputation I guess, being adversely affected. So, on the bright side, you know, we've had 0 murders for 2 years. But on the ugly side, if you like, the crime situation, which is drug related, continues. You know, it's a big deal in Lethbridge when those crime stats come out. They get a lot of publicity. I don't like to compare ourselves to other cities, but in places...
It's not apples to apples necessarily, right?
Not necessarily. In places like Grand Prairie and Red Deer, which were 9th and 10th, this isn't as big an issue as it plays in Lethbridge. Lethbridge has evolved from being a large Raymond into being a small Calgary, and we have big city issues in a small city without these supports that we need. We've tried to respond at Lethbridge City Council by making policing our #1 funding priority in this budget. So the only things that got funded in the budget were new policing initiatives. Everything else was hold the line. We were doing reviews. Some of you might have seen the results of the first reviews came out this week. We have examined 8 departments, and we'll be looking for opportunities. There'll be another 9 departments We'll be looking for opportunities there to save, but certainly policing costs have not been affected. In fact, we're considering adding policing, and we already pay some of the highest costs for policing in the country. So our budget for policing is $35 million, 23% of our municipal budget, and based on 100,000 people, we're paying $350 per person for policing, and that's a very high ratio.
Okay, so it's not like for a lack of effort here.
That's right.
We're scoring low in some of these rankings here. As you point out, a bright side is the fact that we have a very low homicide rate in comparison with other cities, almost at the bottom of the pile, which is very good. Now, they had something called a crime severity index. Ours is 159 compared to the national average of 75. So we have the 5th poorest record of reversing a negative trend. So there's some work to do. How do we reverse that? I'm not sure what the solution is. We mentioned police, and so that's good. I think more police, would certainly help. And but is it the solution? I don't know.
We all know that it's drug-related crime.
Right.
And what we need is help from the province of Alberta. We need to have a dedicated federal Crown prosecutor, which admittedly is the federal government, but we also need the SCAN units, the safe communities and neighborhoods. We need the police with the authority to shut down drug houses.
Yes.
We need to shut down the drug supply. And then we need the province to provide the supports that are necessary to get people off addiction. So we need to have viable intox, detox. Now, intox has just started. It looks promising. And we need to be able to transition addicts into treatment and recovery that's barrier-free and culturally sensitive.
Okay. So again, a good opportunity for viewers as well in the Lethbridge area here to go to our local MLAs here. And we've got both the opposition and the party in power represented here. So you know what? It's a good place to go, and need to keep the pressure up. We do need to see that applied here in Lethbridge because the numbers back it up. I mean, and so many of these crimes, break and enters, assaults, things like that, are related to the drug trade. They certainly are.
So Calgary and Edmonton have those supports in place. I've said it over and over again. We need one consistent message coming from the city of Lethbridge. When we're blaming other organizations, we're not moving forward. We need to say, here's the assets we do have, here's the assets we need, and we need to move forward on that.
All right. What's the response been from the public on hiring 9 new community peace officers? Is that helping downtown? Because it should help, to some degree, right?
So we've had to watch over the summer. The peace officers just rolled out. It will, I believe, help to have more uniform presence, and we believe that funding initiative was one that will be successful, but we need to continue. We will monitor it to make sure it is, and we've asked the police to look at other alternatives. Can there be other ways to look at this drug and crime issue? The problem is you can't have police everywhere in the city at once. It's almost impossible to stop crime. The criminals are always looking to be evasive. They're not trying to commit crimes in broad daylight. And so people are frustrated that the crimes continue relatively unabated, and we're having not a lot of success stopping things like break and entries and theft of goods from people's yards. Car thefts are challenging, and we need to make sure that the community's well educated to ensure that they don't make themselves vulnerable to theft.
Right. Okay. Well, speaking of getting education and so forth, next week is National Addictions Awareness Week, and there's some opportunities for the public to get informed and connected. Tomorrow and Saturday, Alberta Health Services hosting the Opioids Don't Discriminate session all day. It'll be on the 2nd floor at the Park and Ride Transit Terminal downtown. So I thought I'd mention that anyway. And hey, why not? More information is never a bad thing.
I think it's good to put a human face on addiction. Many people have strong opinions, and many people are very judgmental about the addicts. They don't see it the same way I do, because I often meet families who've been affected by addiction. I meet addicts who are struggling to recover. I know people who've lost family members to overdoses. it's a different perspective when you know those who are affected. So understanding what families are going through, some of that is what is going to be on display. And I think if everyone would take time to reach out and understand what the issues are and how families are affected by addiction, and looking at ways to address it on a more compassionate level, I think that would help us in our community.
Yeah, I know, well said. I mean, you know what? That can only help if we begin to understand why this is happening, who it happens to. People don't choose, in one sense, to, hey, I want to grow up to be an addict. I don't think so. You know, life circumstances happen. Can I get you to comment a little bit on the Kainai Transition Society Job Ready program? Now, I understand that the city actually hired 15 Indigenous people with some, challenging backgrounds to work for the city, get some job skills training and so forth. And I heard it went well. Is the city going to be doing more of that down the road?
I think we want to make sure that we give people a chance. We have to be leaders in the community when it comes to hiring Indigenous employees. I think until recently, we had 4 Indigenous employees and 1,200 full-time, 600 part-time employees, and 4 out of 1,800 is not a very good number.
Right.
It's not representative of the population of the city at large, and it would suggest that there's something that needs to be corrected. Many employers might take the same view if the city takes the lead.
Okay, excellent. So we can expect maybe more next year as well?
Yes, we want to continue hiring Indigenous people, and we want to make sure that they feel valued, and we want to make sure that they have useful jobs. If they are going to school, getting training, and graduating from programs, we hope that they will all get a fair chance when it comes to applying for jobs in the city and at the city.
Very good. Okay. A few weeks ago, a group of Lethbridge business people traveled together up to Edmonton to meet with some politicians and business people up there. Team Lethbridge, right? Have you heard anything back there? I know the idea is to promote Lethbridge, make some connections. Had any feedback on that at all? Or?
What it is, we meet with most ministries in the Alberta government. And it's great to have 8 to 10 people in the room, many of them who are directly affected and knowledgeable of that particular ministry.
Right.
So we go there without any specific asks necessarily, but to talk about issues in the city of Lethbridge. What we wanted to do is say how we can work with the provincial government and help them be successful, and then open up the dialogue so each individual in the meeting can give their perspective on how they contribute within the authority of that particular ministry.
Okay, so obviously you can't tell, immediately what kind of results these meetings produce, but historically down the road, do they produce good things for the city?
We hope so. The group's been going since 2007. This was the largest group ever. I think we had 55 people on this mission.
That's great.
In Edmonton for 3 days. So 3 days of meetings with ministries. We were introduced in the provincial legislature. And so we are the only municipality that does that.
Really?
And it's important to raise the image of Lethbridge, raise the reputation of Lethbridge, build a relationship with the provincial government, and make sure that we are on the radar when the provincial government's making decisions. It's important to continue to stress that Lethbridge is the largest city in Alberta after Calgary and Edmonton. And they need to remember that in Edmonton.
I like it.
We need to be on the radar on a regular basis, and people should be asking, how's this going to play in Lethbridge?
I think that's great.
We can't continue to have our issues ignored by the provincial government. So
That's good. You got to make some noise. Hey, and some positive news for Lethbridge. I mentioned it earlier. Western Investor Magazine ranks our city as the top city in Alberta, actually, to invest in, and number 4 in the Western provinces. This is based on our steady growth pattern here and a solid economic base. That's kudos to you, I guess, and the team at City Council.
I think many. We have a great economy based on food, our diversified economy. We need to continue to promote that. And we need to continue to build assets in the city of Lethbridge which promote economic development. Things like the airport, things like the convention center, things that will continue to highlight Lethbridge as a great place to invest.
Okay, that sounds good. Christmas fast approaching. Downtown Lethbridge is hoping that the Heart of the Holidays initiative is going to draw some people downtown. So lots of things happening. I mean, you got the artificial ice rink downtown. You want to tell us a bit about all the events that are being planned for the next few weeks?
We're looking at new ways of encouraging people to come downtown and support downtown businesses, eat downtown at downtown restaurants. And we want people to feel comfortable downtown. There's been a lot of discussion about how safe downtown is. We've brought out the Downtown Clean and Safe initiative with the more visible uniform presence. That should help. But we want people to shop downtown, and we want to support downtown businesses. We want to work with them. You know, I'm in the Penny on a regular basis. I go to the How Sweet It Is candy store on a regular basis. I love that little gift shop on the corner called Celia. And I love the downtown restaurants. And I think people need to feel comfortable downtown. As maybe as a male, I'm not as intimidated as some of, you know, we're getting a lot of concerns from women about being downtown alone. And I think if people are together in groups, more people in the downtown will make downtown safer.
You know, that's an interesting perspective, actually. You know, the more people you have downtown who are, you know, shopping and community-minded, you know, I guess you displace darkness with light. You know, in that sense. I mean, really, you know, practically speaking, I think there's some truth to that. Real quick plug here, too, for the city's Nikayuko Japanese Garden. They received some good press recently. The North American Gardens Tourism Conference ranked it as one of the top 10 garden attractions worth traveling for across North America. So that's just so cool. And the Winter Lights Festival, of course, coming up, and I understand they're going to have some horse-drawn carriages on Saturdays. Very cool idea.
So Nikayuko has been very dynamic the last few years, doing things differently. One of the challenges I think Nikayuko has, they had a legacy of 50 years. Now we're into 52. But maybe 50 years of doing similar things, people said, well, I've been to Nikayuko. Adding the winter season, the Winter Lights Festival is tremendous. Getting the reputation as one of the top 10 gardens to visit in North America puts us on a tourist destination map. And we can link that with things like Head Smashed In. Our Galt Museum can benefit. Helen Schuler can benefit. There's a lot of things in the city that can benefit from drawing tourists to our city. And businesses, hotels, restaurants will benefit as well.
Yeah, very good. You know what, before we close here, I'm running out of time, but I want to put a plug in here too for the 15th Annual Mayor's Prayer Breakfast. This is happening on Saturday, November 30th, 9 a.m. This will be at the Sandman Signature Lethbridge Lodge. And so we want to invite our viewers here as well to come out and join you for this good breakfast. And we want to pray for you and get counsel and other leaders here as well, our MLAs and so forth. And, you know, I think we also want to express our appreciation for the hard work that you do. I mean, you know what, yes, we have disagreements, you know, in our city about how we should handle things and so forth. But I can tell you, you know what, it's not easy to be in the public eye. And you are, and you'll get both kudos and flack. It kind of comes with the territory. And I think we do need to express our appreciation for the hard work that you do for our city. And so we're going to come out and pray for you there. And I want to invite people. You can get tickets by calling 403-394-7707. We'd love to see you there. I'm working that morning. I'll be hosting the news, so I can't make it. But I know a lot of my friends are coming out for this as well. So, so thank you for all you do for our city.
Well, it's all about building community, and it's about doing things together. And I think that's the value of having the group come together to maybe reflect on it. I think the city's become more challenging because of the significant social issues, but the only way we'll resolve those social issues is by working together and providing solutions when someone comes up with things like meaningful daily activity, giving people hope. It's going to take a whole community to do that. A few politicians aren't going to get that done by themselves.
You're absolutely right. It needs to come from the ground up. So, but we do appreciate what you are all doing there. So thank you. Yeah, we're out of time. So thank you very much, Mayor Spearman, for joining us again here today.
It's always a pleasure. Thank you, Paul.
Prime Minister Trudeau unveiled a slightly larger cabinet this week with some new faces and portfolios. Joining us to talk about this is our parliamentary reporter, Ray Filion. So, Ray, it's been a busy week for you. Tell us a little bit about some of the appointments. There's some new faces, right?
Yeah, some new faces, a slightly larger cabinet than the one we had before the election. 36 members as opposed to 34, so 2 extra members. 18 men, 18 women, so gender parity is maintained, plus the prime minister, of course. A few new faces, but mostly old faces who are keeping their jobs, especially in the most senior portfolios like finance. It's still Bill Morneau, the finance minister, who's been in place for 4 years. Harjit Sajjan keeps national defense. And there are some new portfolios, as you mentioned. Some of them have interesting names. Here's some of them. There's a Minister of Diversity, Inclusion, and Youth. It's Barjit Chagger who's in charge. She's from Ontario. We now have a Minister of Middle Class Prosperity, Mona Fortier, who's also Associate Minister of Finance. She's going to be working hand in hand with Bill Morneau. I think it's window dressing, essentially. I think, Justin Trudeau for 5 years now has been talking about the importance of the middle class. The government is there for middle class Canadians and those working hard to join the middle class. So he's named a middle class prosperity minister.
But what would that minister actually do? Do we have any kind of notion of what she might be doing?
It's not clear yet. I guess we're going to have to wait until the minister's mandate letters are published to find out more about this job and others. We also have a Minister of Digital Government that's held by Joyce Murray of British Columbia, and a Minister of Northern Affairs, Mr. Dan Vandal of Winnipeg. Some people pointed out that Winnipeg is actually over 2,400 kilometers from Iqaluit. So
yeah, that's kind of an odd appointment in some ways, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, but you have to name somebody in charge of the North, and the closest one they can find happens to be a Winnipeg MP. There you go.
All right. Well, one of the most important portfolios is the environment portfolio. And they had a few options there. And there was speculation one of his new recruits might get the job, but apparently it might have caused a bit of a backlash in Alberta and Saskatchewan, right? Instead going to Jonathan Wilkinson.
We're talking about Stephen Guilbeault, a new MP from the Montreal area. Now, Mr. Guilbeault is well known and has been well known as a career environmentalist. He used to work for Greenpeace and other environmental groups. We used to see him, taking part in some coup d'éclat. He's against pipelines, 100% against new pipelines, including Trans Mountain, and that was the main issue. Can you imagine if a well-known opponent to pipeline projects would have had the environment portfolio? I think there would have been a huge uproar in Western Canada. So instead, Mr. Trudeau has decided to name Mr. Guilbeault Canadian Heritage Minister. And yeah, you're right. Jonathan Wilkinson of British Columbia is getting the environment portfolio. He used to be Catherine McKenna's parliamentary secretary, the former environment minister. And up until this week, he served as fisheries minister. He represents a BC constituency, but they're highlighting the fact that he lived in Saskatchewan for a while. He even worked for former Premier Roy Romanow, so he knows a thing or two about the oil patch. They think he's going to be a good fit there.
Okay, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that one turns out. That's a tough job. And of course, Catherine McKenna, I don't know, is this a demotion, Minister of Infrastructure and Communities? How do you see that? I know she was, getting a lot of flack, of course, in a tough position there, so.
And a lot of name calling as well. I
Yes.
think, she didn't say she was happy to leave the environment, that she didn't ask the Prime Minister to give her a new job, but personally, I think she's relieved. I think she needed a bit of a break because she didn't have an easy time at the environment. She worked very hard, but she also, there was a lot of name calling. Hal and I talked a few weeks ago about that slur word, the C word that was painted on her constituency office here in Ottawa. So I think she needed a break, and she quite frankly looks relieved that she's getting a new challenge.
Yeah, and you know what? We do need to, I think, acknowledge that anyone in public life like this as a politician, yes, we love to criticize, but you know what? They're human beings as well, and that can really take its toll. So.
Being environment minister, if I may, is a tough job. Usually ministers over the past 10 years or so, no one has lasted more than 2 years in that job. Catherine McKenna has had that portfolio for 4 years. So I think she needed a bit of a break and a new challenge.
For sure. Now, Jim Carr, Trudeau's special representative for the prairies. Again, one of those interesting What does that mean?
Yeah, exactly. Well, he's the new Prime Minister's special representative for the prairies. As you well know, Paul, Alberta and Saskatchewan didn't elect a single Liberal MP, so they have no representation in cabinet. So Mr. Trudeau has turned to Jim Carr, a minister from Winnipeg also, who's going to be his special representative in the prairies. His mandate, as was stipulated in the press release that we got on Wednesday, is to ensure people from Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba have a strong voice in Ottawa. Also, interestingly, on Thursday, the mayor of Calgary, Mr. Nenshi, was here in the nation's capital. He had a face-to-face meeting with Mr. Trudeau, and he said that the federal government is open to changing Bill C-69, which a lot of people in Western Canada have dubbed the No Pipeline Bill. Mr. Carr said as much as well during a scrum with the press. And after that, the whole thing was clarified by the Environment Minister, Mr. Wilkinson, who said, look, we're willing to reconsider how this bill will be implemented, but they're not, he says, interested or looking at amending the bill. So
what does that mean, though? Or like, right? Does that mean, they're saying possibly some changes, but what kind of changes? The only changes that would matter to us, I think, in Alberta and Saskatchewan are changes that would reassure the investors that it's okay. You're not going to have to jump through 532 hoops, literally, in order to finally get approval to open up your business here after spending billions of dollars. You may or may not get in here. Well, people need to know clearly what they're getting into, right?
Yeah, but it's not clear at this point. All Mr. Wilkinson and others would say is they're willing to look at the way the bill will be implemented, but they're not willing to amend the legislation. So the text of the law, as it was adopted earlier this year by Parliament, will stay. It's the way it comes into force, from what I understand, that may or may not change. But they're open to suggestion, they say.
Wow, okay, yeah. Well, we'll see how that plays out. It's not super promising by the sounds of it, but time will tell. And François-Philippe Champagne is the new face of Canadian diplomacy, Foreign Affairs Minister. So it's a pretty big job.
Absolutely. He's getting a big promotion. He's the new face, as you said, of Canadian diplomacy, the new head of global affairs here in Ottawa. He's going to be traveling the world. It's kind of interesting because he's a very good ambassador for the Liberal brand. Prime Minister Trudeau in 2018 named him infrastructure minister. So his job was basically to travel the country, hand out checks, shake hands with people, which is something he's very, very good at. He's a very social person. Now he's going to be doing the same thing, but on the international stage. He's going to be traveling a lot outside of Canada. Of course, some of his biggest challenges will be to deal with China. As you know, things are pretty rough right now between Ottawa and Beijing, and also Canada's bid to win a seat on the UN Security Council. This is going to be pretty interesting to see if it works in the coming years. And he actually hit the ground running this week. The day after he was sworn in as Foreign Affairs Minister, he was on a plane on his way to Japan for the annual meeting of the G20 Foreign Affairs Ministers. So yeah, one of those cabinet ministers hitting the ground running right off the bat.
Yeah, you got to have some people in the background preparing you for that, right? You just get thrown into the fire. Somebody do some research on this quickly. Yeah, that's not an enviable job in that sense, and it's going to be tough with China. Yeah, something needs to happen there. Chrystia Freeland, of course, has been on that portfolio for quite some time, and she's apparently still going to be active in the Foreign Affairs file for some time anyway, even though she's got a new role as Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs and Deputy Prime Minister. We could chat about that here in a minute as well. But she's going to be, I think, trying to hammer out the new NAFTA deal, the USMCA, right?
Exactly, because she becomes Justin Trudeau's super minister, as you said, Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs. So she's got more of a domestic role. But interestingly, indeed, she's keeping the responsibility for the Canada-US file. And chief among them will be to ensure that this new deal that was signed last year between Canada, the United States and Mexico gets ratified. It has been ratified in Mexico, not so in Canada, because Canada is waiting to see what's going to happen in Washington. And as you know, the new USMCA or CUMCA, there's so many different acronyms for this new NAFTA deal, is held up in the American Congress. The Democrats say that they're willing to have it ratified very quickly. But as you know, Washington right now is consumed with this impeachment process, which is underway for President Trump. Although they say, as I said, they say it's a priority for them. They want to see this thing through. And Minister Freeland said this week that we must take them at their word. She seems to be hopeful that it's going to happen, that it'll get ratified, and this deal will finally come into force.
Yeah, and I think it does make some sense to leave her there because she worked so hard on it for so many years, knows it inside out, to actually follow that through and get it done. Now, the new role as Intergovernmental Affairs Minister and Deputy Prime Minister is interesting. I guess the idea is to hopefully have somebody calm down some of the tensions between the provinces, east and west and so forth. And Deputy Prime Minister, it's an interesting animal there, isn't it? I mean, what can't she do? What exactly is her role there?
Well, she's basically Justin Trudeau's second in command. This is a position that hasn't existed so far under this current Liberal government with Mr. Trudeau. It didn't exist either when Stephen Harper was Prime Minister, but it did exist before under Jean Chrétien, under Paul Martin. Prime ministers used to have a deputy prime minister. So the idea here is Justin Trudeau absolutely wanted to have someone he deeply trusts. And he says that he found out during the whole renegotiation with the United States on NAFTA that he and Chrystia Freeland worked very well together. Now, the priority for the government is no longer internationally, it's domestically. We have a divided country. It's plain to see since the election. Not a single Liberal MP, as we mentioned before, was elected in two provinces out west. The Bloc is back in force in Quebec with some 30 MPs. So Justin Trudeau needs someone he can trust to try and bring back a sense of unity, to avoid the country falling apart. So that's why Chrystia Freeland becomes the most important cabinet minister in Ottawa right now as Deputy Prime Minister.
Okay, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how she handles that. What are your thoughts on Seamus O'Regan as Minister of Natural Resources? It just sounds odd to me. Now, I know they're personal friends, the Prime Minister and O'Regan. And Newfoundland, in all fairness, does have, some oil industry happening down there as well. But, boy, it's a long ways away from Saskatchewan and Alberta.
Oh, and Mr. O'Regan himself was asked the question, why is an MP from Newfoundland and Labrador the new minister in charge of natural resources when most of the oil and gas industry is out west? And that's what he said. He said that oil and gas is a very important industry in Newfoundland and Labrador. It accounts for a big chunk of the province's economy. So that's the argument, that's the rationale. Of course, Justin Trudeau couldn't name anyone from either Saskatchewan and Alberta because no Liberal was elected there. So, he's relying on a personal friend. If you look at some of Justin Trudeau's wedding pictures, Mr. O'Regan was there. They go back a long way, those two, just like Gerald Butts, by the way. So, he's appointed a personal friend. He's also appointed a personal friend in the position of Indigenous Services, Mark Miller. They've known each other since college. A lot of personal friends for Justin Trudeau in that cabinet.
Okay, well, that'll be interesting to watch as well. Real briefly, a Conservative Senator, Jean-Guy Desjardins, left the Torah caucus because of apparently Andrew Scheer's social conservative viewpoints. Any thoughts on that?
That's right. A few weeks ago, you may recall that Senator Desjardins, who hails from Quebec, publicly called on Andrew Scheer to call it quits, to leave the Conservative Party because he thinks that Mr. Scheer's personal views on abortion and on same-sex marriage have become toxic in many parts of the country. Mr. Scheer is not going anywhere, so this week Senator Desjardins decided to quit the Conservative caucus. He remains a Conservative. He still has his membership card, but he's no longer going to be in the Conservative caucus. He's decided to join the new group of senators, which calls itself the Canadian Senators Group. And it begs the question, will others follow suit?
Yeah, that will be interesting to watch. if it's just a one-off or if there's more that join up there. Of course, I guess we'll find out a little later next year with the convention and see how the leadership review goes there. I'm running out of time. Thanks so much for your time today, Ray.
My pleasure, Paul. See you next time.
Always good to have you here. Ray Fillion, BCN's parliamentary reporter. On behalf of all of us at Bridge City News, thank you for watching.